Some people have it on the wall. It says, today is the first day of the rest of my life. What do you mean it's the first day of the rest of your life? Tomorrow belongs to nobody. It's a canceled check. We can't go back. And tomorrow is no one's IOU. All we have is today.
You are and will always be your most valuable asset. Welcome to the Me Inc. podcast, a series of conversations with individuals living happy, healthy, and engaged lives, while exploring the importance of emotional intelligence to thrive in this ever-changing world. My name is Nigel Franklin, a CPA, MBA, and a certified emotional intelligence coach. My mission and passion is to enable others to be that best version of themselves by understanding the importance of making investments in their physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. Let's start the show. Do you ever feel like you're running on a hamster wheel, trying to squeeze out every ounce of productivity from your day? What if I told you the answer isn't in cramming more hours into your work, but rather in the quality of time you invest? Let's take a journey with Don Wetmore, a businessman and teacher who found himself in the productivity space by accident. He has a wealth of insights to share from his 30 years of teaching and coaching. Be inspired as Don shares his personal stories of overcoming self-doubt and pursuing his goals. He talks about balancing priorities, being of service, and the significant interplay between emotional intelligence and personal productivity. Don't miss out on this opportunity to redefine your understanding of productivity and start making better decisions today. Do you ever feel like you're running on a hamster wheel, trying to squeeze out every ounce of productivity from your day? What if I told you the answer isn't in cramming more hours into your work, but rather in the quality of time you invest? Let's take a journey with Don Wetmore, a businessman and teacher who found himself in the productivity space by accident. He has a wealth of insights to share from his 30 years of teaching and coaching. Be inspired as Don shares his personal stories of overcoming self-doubt and pursuing his goals. He talks about balancing priorities, being of service, and the significant interplay between emotional intelligence and personal productivity. Don't miss out on this opportunity to redefine your understanding of productivity and start making better decisions today. So for today's conversation, and I think I realized that I start every conversation as that I'm super excited for today's conversation. And it is truly a genuine feeling because the people that I'm speaking with are dynamic and have been value added to my life and my experiences. Today, it's my pleasure to have with me Don Wetmore. Don's the president of the Productivity Institute, where the value proposition of the organization is to help individuals leverage their productivity in less time. He is an author, an entrepreneur. I think he's done out, and Don was the first coach who I hired back in 2005 or 6, if I remember correctly. Don also has worked with my teams in that space of we're always trying to figure out how we can do more. So we explored skills, tools that was actually necessary to make us more effective with the time that we have. For instance, Don came in and he did a speed reading course for my team at Prudential, which was the way it was. I couldn't give you an extra hour in the day, but if I gave you the skill, or if we gave the team the skill where they can get through an hour's worth of data information in half hour, maybe that's creating additional half hour of space. So it's my pleasure and my joy to have you as part of this conversation, Don. And I think it's right to say that the foundation that you've given me so long ago has definitely helped in me being as successful as I am today. So formative in a lot of the things and how I look at time, I look at my effectiveness. And I've carried for a long time the idea that you don't reduce stress, but you increase your capacity to handle stress so that you can actually do more. And I think you've been an inspiration to that. So you've done a lot, Don, author, businessman, teacher. How does a good guy like you find himself in this productivity space?
I fell into it by accident. The good things that happen in life sometimes are that way. My undergraduate was in accounting at Bentley University, and then accounts or others. So focused on the nitty gritty and all of that and dollars and cents. But I wasn't interested in practicing being a CPA. Why would anybody seek out that kind of a profession? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, that's right. You're a CPA.
I swear to you, about 5 guests on the podcast so far have said the same thing. I'm starting to worry about my choices in life now.
Let me just compliment you because you're one of 3 CPAs in the world that has a personality. So it's a pleasure to know 1/3 of them. So I wanted to go into law, join the Bar Association, and got the license in Connecticut, got an MBA in concentration in marketing. Out of law school, went to work for an attorney, and that lasted for a couple of years, and I opened up my own shop. And along the way, setting up my own office, I became aware of an opportunity to teach at Mercy College in Dobbs Ferry, New York. It was an ad in the New York Times, so I responded to it. And so they engaged me, they hired me, and I was just teaching a couple of classes at night. It was fun and talking about business law and the thing that I'm really interested in. And several months later, they offered me a full-time assignment to teach the law courses. Now, and I had a full load, but it was only a 2-day-a-week schedule because they wanted real-life practitioners in the classroom. So I taught Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, that kind of thing. Doing all these things, and it fascinated me about the quantity of time that we put in on almost anything is not so relevant as to what we're producing, because there's all levels of different output and productivity and different levels of time. So anyway, to the point, I got into this by accident. My department chair came to me and said, "You're doing all this stuff, practice and teaching and all that. You must know something about time management. And would you be willing to put together a program for our students, a couple of hour program?" So I was flattered to be asked, and I got the materials together. And it was a basic class. Don't procrastinate. You get sleep and the usual stuff. It never ran. They didn't have a budget for it. So I just started just... Yeah, it's just, I'm telling you, somebody has permanent potential here.
Yeah.
And so I just scheduled it, and I invited friends, relatives, and clients, and anybody that owed me a favor to come and listen to me. And that just morphed into an extended curriculum, and I built it out to a 3-day program, which I've done over the years now. And then from that, I was invited to do on-site work and do one-on-one coaching. So that's where my coaching career began. That was some 30 years ago. And I focus in on productivity issues, and that might be having to do with marketing. It might be a career coaching, hiring, retaining employees, any number of things with a variety of experiences that I've had. And as a coach, there's only 3 reasons to engage a coach: a sports coach, a health coach, a business coach, a productivity coach. And simply is we're all at point A. This is our reality, and we want to be somewhere else. And that's point B. I'm in business for me. My marketing sucks. I'm not making enough money. That's point B. So reason number 1 to have a coach is I don't know what point B is. I just know point A isn't good. And so the second reason to engage a coach is I'm at point A and I want to go to point B, and I know what it is that I want to do. I want to double my sales or double my profitability, but I don't know how to get there. And then the final reason to engage a coach is I'm at point A and I want to be somewhere else. It's point B, and I know exactly how to get there, but I can't do it on my own. So it's an accountability thing. And most of the clients that I work with are in that second and third. They know where they want to go and a little bit about how to get there. But that accountability is so valuable.
So direction and accountability. How do you define productivity to someone?
Productivity is not everybody achieving the same results. Productivity is not everybody being a multimillionaire or being an author or being whatever it is in life. My topic is personal productivity. It's just that we get to decide our productivity. And I break down the life's challenges into the 7 vital areas of life. And all of life challenges and opportunities so fit within these 7 areas. And they're our health, our family, and our financial dimensions, our intellectual, social, professional, and spiritual. And so to the question, how do we define productivity? The person who gets up in the morning and looks at and values each one of those 7 vital areas on, let's say, a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is the highest number. And in their own mind, every one of those dimensions is a 10. My health is just fine. My family situation is ideal. No more money would make any difference. Intellectually, I'm engaged. My friends, it's all a 10. How can anybody say, no, you're not a productive person because you don't have a certain degree or a designation or something? Everybody gets to define their own productivity. That's why it's personal productivity.
What percentage of the population do you find is doing this well?
Something about the 20-80 rule in life. I think the vast majority, maybe it's as much as 80%. I haven't really taken a survey on that, but most people are taught in our culture to measure productivity against the gains of other people and the expectations of other people. One of the interesting principles of time management is everybody we come in contact with 24/7, they have a better idea how we should spend our time than us. And that doesn't make the world a bad place. I don't mean that at all. But if there's a void of leadership in our time management life and how we're using our time and the choices that we're making and the goals that we're achieving, if there's a void there, there's a lot of other people out there that are going to step in where the void is. One of the exercises that I use with most of my clients is the starting point is looking at those 7 vital areas. When we're born, we're given a book that has empty pages, and it's a book of life, and it has 7 chapters in it for each one of those 7 vital areas. And each day we're living our lives, we're literally writing the story of our lives every single day in each one of those areas. So the big question in time management and productivity and personal productivity, on the last day of your life, what is it you'd like to say about every one of those 7 vital areas? What do you want to say about your health life on the last day of your life? What do you want to say about your financial life on the last day of your life? And not where you think life will take you, not, oh no, if luck gives me it. No. If you could wave the magic wand and the genie comes out of the bottle and you could have anything, what would it be? And I'm telling you very specific, and that's writing the book of life backwards. And that's the first assignment that I give most of my clients. Because if you don't know where you're going, you never know when you get there. You don't know. And one of the most, and an environment where everybody's got a better idea of how to spend your time than you, the most valuable tool that we can use in our time management sphere is using the word no. But how do you say no to somebody if you don't know where you're going in the first place? It's like that story of Alice in Wonderland. She's down in the rabbit hole and she comes to a crossroads. She doesn't know, go left or right. And she has no map or anything and hasn't been there. So up in the tree is that big smiling Cheshire cat and says, which way do I go? And the cat asks a very poignant question. He says, where do you want to go? What's your destination? And Alice says, I don't know. And the cat says, take either road. What difference does it make? And having said that, no matter what road you take in our culture, you are productive in comparison in different areas. And with the fruits of productivity and earnings and all of that, we are productive. But that's not the issue. I'm not out there working with people who are totally unproductive people. We're all productive. The issue is how much more productive can we be?
There are certain formative things about how we approach life and how we find our way to where we are. You've done so many amazing things. What would you look back as those foundational experiences that has you on the path that you're on today?
I grew up in a blue-collar family up in Massachusetts. My dad was a contractor and he worked 9 days a week. He was a good provider for the family. But short of work, he had very little interest in anything, had hobbies, never played golf or anything. Didn't spend a whole lot of time with family. And I don't share this story of regret at all. He was doing what he thought was, and he was a very good provider and all that. But the point was he did have a one vice that he allowed himself, and that we lived on close to the Atlantic, Gloucester, Massachusetts, on the ocean. And so he had a boat, and the wooden boat, and it required a lot of work. And so he'd be working 7, 9 o'clock at night under lights and sanding it. And he'd be lucky if he got the boat in the water by 4th of July. And then the season is pretty much over Labor Day. So he'd have maybe 6 weekends and half of them would rain and all that. But he always said, when I retire, I'm going to go to Maine. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. So fast forward, he does retire, sells off the business. And my mom was still with us. And he wasn't rich or anything, but didn't have a mortgage. And my wife and I were visiting him on 4th of July weekend. And he said, let's go out for a boat ride. He's got his boat in the water. And I said, yeah, this is cool. So we're not in the river. And I said, when did you get the boat in the water? He said, the Memorial Day. It's 2 months. I go, wow, this retirement thing is really good. That's great. He says, now, where have you been? He says, this is the first time I've been out in a boat. And I'm thinking, it took me a while to get my thumb off his throat. And so it kind of planted the scene. Okay. Some people have it on the wall. It says, today is the first day of the rest of my life. What do you mean it's the first day of the rest of your life? Tomorrow belongs to nobody. It's a canceled check. We can't go back. And tomorrow is no one's IOU. All we have is today. I used to have that on my wall, and I took that down. And my little saying on the wall, I'm looking at it now, it says, today is the last day of your life. And I don't mean that literally, but if you think that today is your last day, it creates a sense of urgency that's really good to enhance our productivity. So that's half the story. But then fast forward, I get in my law practice. And maybe it was the population I was dealing with. I was doing a lot of estates and wills and elderly people and a population that aren't really starting any long novel. And maybe it was the population I was dealing with, but they were filled, by and large, maybe 80%, were filled with all kinds of regrets and the couldas and the shouldas and the wouldas. I should have spent more time with those kids. I could have gone into business if only I woulda, coulda, shoulda done that. I'm as optimistic as anybody else. But again, at that stage in life, I don't want to end up that way. And so I want to take responsibility for my productivity. So that's what kind of got me into doing the self-education and reading the books that we all read of Think and Grow Rich and those foundation books and all that, but really focusing in on that and starting to teach it. And that's the best way to learn something, is to teach it. So I've trained over 100,000 people, and I've done 3,000 presentations internationally and domestically, and I've written 8 books on the topic. And I still practice law, but doing this is a lot more fun than suing people.
What do you think that there's something that's different as you go across the world and preach this personal productivity gospel?
It's been universally accepted in the different groups. I've done a lot of work in the Middle East and Europe and all that. The culture is different, of course. And so the expectation in the book of life that one writes and is heavily influenced by the culture that they're in. And every country has its own unique opportunities and disadvantages and so on. Here in our country, we're noted for the entrepreneurial spirit and so on. And that doesn't mean that other countries that don't have that kind of a culture is lesser, because again, it comes down to personal productivity. So in some cultures, the family becomes a dominant thing, that care for family and personal productivity is measured in those terms. How well am I taking care of my parents and those kinds of things? That becomes a priority. Perhaps in our culture, many would say, no, it's really got to be related to the financial thing and use that as a focus. So we're all going to have a different book of life, but we all come to the same ending, and the same question is asked. What do you hope you've been able to say at the last day of your life? And it could be as simply as, look, I want to say on the last day of my life, I was a good son and a good father. And that's all I was concerned about. And here I am, I'm going to check out, and I've accomplished that. You are the most productive person on the planet as anybody else.
Is there a consistent theme of what people may have felt like they would have done differently if given another opportunity?
The one that comes right to mind, there was a couple that came to me, and they were about 75 years old, and they were coming to me for a set of wills. And the reason they were coming is they were going on their first vacation, and they were at 75, and they were going to get on an airplane, and it was the husband that really pushed. He's scared to death. He's too weak to get through wills. And the focus is always they practice the thinking of more is never enough. And so they didn't achieve the American dream, if you will. They were millionaires, but at great sacrifice. They never went anywhere. She never purchased clothes. She made her own clothes. And those are all honorables. None of this is a criticism. They had 2 children, 2 sons. One was about 35 years of age, and he was an engineer, very responsible. And the younger was, I don't know. So we go through the process. We're going to set up the will, okay, and we're going to have reciprocal wills. Yeah, husband dies first, wife gets it all. Wife gets the husband. Sure, that's fine. And I said, all right, now, when the 2 of you pass on, many people would want to benefit their children. And I said, yes. So do you want to then give the children to them equally? And I gave a couple of other suggestions, and they were cursed. They couldn't come up with a formula that worked. And here's the reason. He said, look, we sweated to get this money all the years. And my older boy, he did be very good with the money. But the younger boy, he would spend it. The words that they use, not mine, I would never say this. He would piss it away in 6 months. And they roll over my grave at that. Okay, all right. Why not? Let's leave it all to the older son. No, I can't do that. We love our children both. The same. I can't do that. I said, well, how about you appoint your older son to be the trustee for all of them? No, they don't get really along, and he's always trying to treat him badly. I said, well, how about if you get into the Heart Association? And it was just already, and they never resolved it. I don't know if they never came back and could never, and they were cursed with it, and they were tormented with it, and they were full of the regret when they, upon announced, we had quite a conversation, Mr. Time Management. I can't help myself. I said, what would you have done differently? and the reflection, and here you are at 75 and kind of at the end of the trail. And they both said they regretted that they didn't focus on the things that really became very important. In the way they raised their children, taking time to spend with them, going out, the pleasure of getting a new dress and vacations and all of that. And they regret that because there's no going back. And others, I shoulda, coulda, woulda gone and opened up my own business. And if I had only bought Coca-Cola in 1922.
So we often postpone for tomorrow things that we can do today. We don't have the ability to start yesterday, but we do have the ability and opportunity to start today from wherever we're at. So I really do like, though, that the book of life, it's dictated by the norms, the cultures, the opportunities that are unique. The one thing that I want to go in and I want to dig a little bit more into, the mindset that you have, that possibility mindset. Where does that come from?
I got it from my father, and he didn't go to college. He was self-educated. And he was in the Second World War. He came out and had a job as a laborer, and he saw an opportunity to get in his own business, and he had no way of knowing how to do it. But he made the decision to go ahead and do that, and he had the courage to do it. And he made that a successful business. And then he got into a specialty of building foundations, homes on poured concrete in an environment in Massachusetts where that was never done. You build a foundation with brick and block and stone. He was a pioneer and faced a lot of criticism of the community. And he said, I'm not listening to that. And when I started the seminar, I entitled it, Any Dream Will Do. In that sense, we are limited by the thoughts we have in our head, and we do become what we think about all the time. Life does become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Everything in our life is all a byproduct of the choices that we make or fail to make or allow others to make for us. And we make, on average, and there's different studies, 5,000 different decisions every day. I'm going to wear this shirt. I won't wear this shirt. I'm going to make this phone call. I'm going to say these words. And those decisions bring us to where we are in those 7 vital areas. I've had so many people tell me, Don, I am in my 7 vital areas. I am where I am because of my circumstances, they tell me. You don't know the parents I had, the education I had or didn't have, or that works up in New England, but no, we're down south. No. And I think they got it all backwards. What I've learned is our circumstances don't make us. Our circumstances reveal us and the choices that we've made or failed to make or allowed others to make for others. So my theme, and I say this each morning when I start up, and it's my first cup of coffee, and I share this with my clients and as often as I can. And that has a positive thing to it, but it has a negative too. You can have some negative dreams too. Either way, you're going to be reported. So yeah.
The people who know me well will always hear me say, I'm living the dream. And today is the lesson. That's the rub behind it. Is there anything else that you said shaped your mindset in those early years and is still embedded in how you try to show up in the world today?
I'm working on a new book, a fun book, and it's entitled, You Gotta Talk to the Muffin Man. What's that got to do with time management? And you want to make one of the great skills practices that I recommend is whatever it is you want to do in life and profession and dealing with other people and so forth. You want to make blueberry muffins. you can figure it out on your way, or you can just go to the Muffin Man and find out how they're doing it. So when I was going through law school, I had a bookkeeping practice and I had the skills. That was my first business, and I actually started in college. And I had the skills of doing it. I had the personality to do it. Okay. I didn't know about customer service, business skills. I was pointed out to me by some of my clients. And yeah, you're really good, but you're not on time, or all these other skills, soft skills. And I sourced out, I found somebody who was doing what I wanted to do and find out what the personality traits are and how do you treat people and what were the skills that I need and the emotional intelligence, as we call it now today.
Is there an analogy that you have of why to go see the Muffin Man? I think it was just one of the things in one of a previous conversation. I think you shared that idea of seeking others out. But the way that you depicted it was differentiated to me in that I got it in that way, but I couldn't explain it to someone. So do you have an analogy of that idea of going to see the Muffin Man?
Yeah, let's say you and I work in an office, and somebody comes in, Susan comes in, and she's a coworker, and she's got this tray of blueberry muffins, wonderful blueberry muffins. And she's talking to you about how these muffins were made, but I'm not in part of the conversation, but I overhear what's going on. And she mentions, you get to flour, and you get to eggs, and you got to bake it, and I got bits and pieces of this stuff. So I come running home, and I say, boy, I want what Susan's done. I want that output. Yeah, I have blueberry muffins. Now, let's see. She says something about flour. Well, my backyard are dandelions. That's flowers. And she mentioned eggs. So I get the cart and I throw in all of the eggs, 12 eggs in the cart, in the cardboard, okay? And, she said bake it. So I set the oven to 550 and 8 hours ought to do it. And, and this thing comes out in ash and this booze. I drop it on and oh my God. If I only had what she had in her kitchen, man, I could have those wonderful blueberry muffins, but poor me, I can't do it. And then let me stop there and I don't do it. And if I really want to hold on to that, I'll never do that. You don't make blueberry muffins with dandelions. You make it with ground flour, and you don't use all the eggs. You do it in 2, and you bake it at 350 for 45 minutes or whatever. And the exciting thing about this, and I've done this thousands of times, and personally, and you'll never fail to get a good traction with this. When you go to, because people say, I can't go to somebody over here. They're a great salesperson and ask them what they've done. How did you do what you do? And that sort of, they're not going to talk to me. The technique works 100% of the time. And it starts off, and I'll give you a good concrete example. My business is being successful. My wife and I went to boating. And we had an old wooden boat, and it was the best that we could afford. But now we could afford something more, and we wanted a new boat, a fiberglass boat, a 43-foot trawler boat. Okay, and by the way, you have to be very careful about who you share your dreams and goals and everything with others, because there are the people who are the enablers and the ones that are the disablers. And you should have heard what our friend said when we set out, we're going to get in this boat. It was around $200,000. And even my best friend said, my goodness, Don, you don't know how to do that. And you haven't done that before. And I said, I'm looking on the floor and I said, I didn't see that in my background. So I haven't done it before, so I can't do it. I said, how many 43-foot boats have you purchased? And he said, none. I said, you've perfected that skill of not doing that. Why am I listening to you? You're a disabled person in that. So anyways, we taking my own advice, and my wife and I, we went to a couple of the marinas nearby, and we found somebody that had the boat out there, because you know what, without very few exceptions, anything that we want in life, it's already being done. We don't have to reinvent the wheel and that sort of thing. So we found the person had a boat, and we pounded on the door, and he came to me and said, what can I help you? And I said, and this is the technique. I asked 2 questions. And let me explain why it works and why it works 100% of the time. The topic of conversation in everybody's mind, their favorite topic of conversation, they want to talk about their successes or their failures. They want to talk about their successes. The second reason it works, and this is the second question, this is why it works 100% of the time. The 3 most powerful words in the English language are, I love you, or any language for that matter. Now, I'm not saying, hey, nice boat, I love you. But when you're saying you're playing value to you, how do you do something like that? And people love to talk about their successes. So he said, hey, yeah, come on board. We'll give you the 50-cent tour. And he's lifting up the floorboards and he's giving me all this information that I didn't know existed. And it turns out that these boats were built in Taiwan and they were imported back to Connecticut. It was down the road, a boat dealer down there. I didn't know all that. Did you know that? I didn't know that. And I said, how are we going to finance? We were doing well, but I didn't have $200,000 in cash. Well, he says, you can get a loan, like a mortgage on a house. So we get a loan for 15, 20 years. And wow, we're getting all this information. It was almost 18 months to the date we took delivery of a brand new 43-foot Elbin trawler. I'm not a smart man. I just know how to see a goal and it's out there. It's for you. Yeah.
Taking a brief pause here. If you're finding value in conversation, it would mean the world to me if you could like, follow, and share this episode. Spreading the word helps more listeners like you join our explorations and discussions. Now let's continue. One of the stories that you shared with me when we first met was how you found your way to the kindness that you bring forward in the world. And I think it was that story about you going all the way back to high school. Do you mind sharing that story with the audience? And I still look back and I still remember that conversation as being very pointed and poignant. If you don't mind, maybe you can go back into that story. And I don't know if you're still open to living that.
Now it's a 9.6 day.
There's more opportunity for you now.
No, I'd be pleased to share that. I was an okay student and I got into high school and I just, I'm feeling my way and all that. So I'm a class clown and that sort of thing. Okay. And so I'm a freshman and Friday afternoon we have study hall and there's 200 kids in the cafeteria and several monitors. Monitor in our section was Miss Taylor. She was our English teacher. And so it's study hall on Friday and I'm yakking away and cutting it up and doing everything that I shouldn't be doing. So she flies over on her broom. She's got to be at least 98 years old. I think everybody had Miss Taylor at one time. I had her when she was like 98 or something. And she said, and she's got this nasally voice. And she said, Mr. Wetmore, this is a study hall. And you're not studying. And this is not talk hall. And you should be studying. If there's talk hall, you could talk. But you can't talk to me because this is study hall. So you should be doing what? You should be studying. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, that's good. I was that clarification. This is good. And it wasn't 5 minutes later, I'm yakking away. And she comes back and she goes back again and again. And finally she unloads on me. And she's screaming at me. And the veins are popping out of her neck. And she said, Mr. Whitmore, I told you 8 times not to talk. And all you do is talk. And what is wrong with you? Are you deaf or are you stupid? Choice here. Now let's see. Mama said, don't be stupid. And a voice loud enough that everybody in this study hall could hear. I stood up and I said, what did you say? That was pretty funny.
I don't think she probably
sounded. So she said, after study hall, I want to see you. And so afterwards, and she takes me out in the car and she said, you want to know something? You're never going to amount to anything. No, what am I, 13, 14-year-olds? And you're never going to amount to anything. When she's my teacher and everything. So if I had any real spirit about learning and education and all that just puts that flame out. And I just said, screw it. I don't care. And then, because my teachers already told me that. Being shy and some issues of self-esteem and all that, it was easy to accept that. Yeah, right, there it is. You're right. Okay. So screw it. I'm not going to do it. So in high school, it was my job to make the upper 2/3 possible. I barely graduated. Okay. And then it came time to consider going to college, and my 2 siblings didn't go. They chose not to. And my parents were pushing me to go to college, and I applied to all the schools in the Boston area, and they got the replies back. No, the one I like the most is, no, you must be kidding, right? I love the dean. And the only place I could get into is a community college that just opened up. It was open enrollment. So if you could fog a mirror and pay the fee. And so off I go to a community college. It's like high school all over again. I'm failing all my classes. And this is the path that I've chosen. I have to take responsibility for that. And then somebody suggested to me that why don't you consider transferring into a real college as an upperclassman, because they need the bodies because of attrition. So that's when I applied to Bentley College. And to this day, I don't know why they accepted me, because I didn't have any credits to speak of to transfer. But in the end, here's the point and the turning point. For the first time in my academic career, I was able to take some classes that I really wanted to take. Up until then, I was just taking stuff that I had to do. And I don't know about you, but when I have to do something, when I have to cut grass, I can find reasons not to do that. But when I want to do things, I move mountains, don't we all? And so I was interested in law, and I took a business law class in marketing. And at the end of the first year, I was on the dean's list. I went to the dean and asked for permission to accelerate to my original graduation date, and he agreed and put me on academic probation, but permitted me to take 6, 7, and there was one semester I took 8 classes and finished up with a 3-point-something average. And I was also voted as the outstanding senior by the faculty of the college for that year. And that just turned it around, and I let go of Miss Taylor. I still tell the story, and I'm grateful for that, what that happened.
How do you distill down that lesson to give to someone? That Miss Taylor story.
Don't let the bastards wear you down. Non corrumpum. This is.
You know what? So seriously, for the last 15 years or so, I've been actually saying, "Don't let the bastards get you down." And I've never given you credit for earlier conversations. The people who've worked with me over the years, especially guys who've reported up to me, it was like I always tell them, "Don't let the bastards get them down." But okay, so I might be giving you credit for that. But going forward. But so you're saying the idea is don't let anyone else set limits on you. It seems like that's what it is. But there's a certain amount of kindness that's necessary as you move through the world, especially if I often struggle with people who are in positions of power, positions of creating a future, helping people who aren't necessarily kind with their words.
We have to be very careful about how we process information. There are words of encouragement and there are words of discouragement, but in the latter, and with what Miss Taylor had said, and I don't have to be a failure just because somebody said that to me. You think about it as somebody said, you're a car. Do you want to be a car? No, you're not going to be a car because somebody says that. And in the lesson in my relationship with other people, and this relates to emotional intelligence, according to our relationship with other people, don't be a Miss Taylor to anybody. The word that we share with other people will bring people up or bring people down. But the second lesson was that there's very little correlation between the quantity of time that we put in and what the output is over here. And I'm not saying no correlation. We do have to put it in certain amounts. And just as an example, it's a very obvious example. Let's take 2 people in sales. They're both of them selling real estate, same market, same training, et cetera, et cetera. And this person over here is making, say, $100,000. And this second person over here is only making $20,000. They're putting in the same amount of time. How do we understand that person over here? The first person is earning 5 times as much as this person. Oh, I know what it is. The first person, they put in 5 times more time. No, then it's only at 24 hours in the day. So this person over here might be more skilled. I allow it. But what it really boils down most of the time is this person is just using their time differently. And so rather than spending more time, the lesson that I learned is it's not a question of how much time that you're putting in, the quantity, and there's very little correlation between the time that we put in and what we let on the results we get. So after college, I was interested in going with the understanding that our capacity to accomplish things if we manage our time really good.
What do you think was the major shift of going from just getting in on not knowing why you were there to being on the dean's list? What do you think was that shift for you? That changed the trajectory of your entire life?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it boils down to this because I've asked myself, why was that the difference? That it was up until that, my academic career, if you will, is all the stuff that I had to do, we were told. And it's the experience that most of us have. And I don't know about you, but when I have to do anything, I find reasons not to do it. But when I got into Bentley, I was able to take things that I wanted to do. I was interested in law. I was interested in marketing and those kinds of things. And when we want to do things, we can move mountains, can't we? And we find the time to do it and we make it happen. I think that was the big shift there. And then couple that with the Miss Taylor thing, I learned not to place a higher value on opinions of other people because everybody's got their own opinions and perspective and all that. That doesn't define me. What defines me is the definition that I want.
The part of my basic value structure and that's a whole exercise that my clients go through. And who are you? What do you value? Is to serve and to serve others in my Christian faith, but also my social life and all of that. I'm certified as an emotional intelligence coach as well, and that's a recent phenomenon now, and how important that is. We can't do it alone. We need other people, and what goes around comes around. And so I have volunteered my time on various causes for children, and I'm in Rotary International. I've been for a number of years, and it's all about helping other people, because what goes around comes around. And I really believe that the universe works that way. If you want more of anything in your life, you want more friends, be a better friend. You want more love, give up love. You want more money, give away more money. I don't mean it foolishly. And don't just give away your money, your time, your treasures, and help other people. And it comes back over and again. And I'll give you one very practical thing, because some people, that sounds like an airy-fairy, a nice thing, being nice to people. No, it's a very practical way a productive way of life. In our bar association, when it came up in one of our meetings, an opportunity to set up a pro bono panel for indigent folks to go to court and they can't afford a lawyer. And there were perhaps 50 or so lawyers in the room, and they asked for a show of hands. How many were willing to do it? And myself, and I think it was 2 other lawyers, said they'll do it. And after the meeting, so many of my colleagues came up to me and said, "What did you do? Why did you raise your hand on that? Why were you going to volunteer for something like that? You're going to get every deadbeat tenant who's screwing up a landlord and everything. And what the hell was in your mind?" And I'm really taken back by that. And I said, there's 2 reasons I did that. Number one is I'm privileged. We're all privileged to practice law. That's something that is given to us. And along with that comes responsibility. We're officers of the court and everything. But beyond that, the practical matter is people are where they are for the moment. That doesn't define their future either. And so but you're not going to get paid for it. I said, I'm not looking to be paid. I want to pay it back. And I didn't really keep track of it. But over the years, those people who were the undesirables that they were talking about, they got their act together. They needed to buy a house. They needed a lawyer. They needed wills. Perhaps it was an accident. They needed a lawyer to get a settlement. And it came back 100 times ever again. That's not the motivation. That's why being nice to people, that whole concept, in a variety of different ways, and treat people with respect always. And it's just a mindset that is, I think, important to be as productive as we need if you value other people.
Yeah. Being of service is something that I think it's something that I hold near and dear, but I've had a hard time reconciling. You put it out and you sometimes expect it to come back the same way, and it doesn't. And it's usually one of those things that I've actually struggled with more, right? Seeing that if you want more of this, put it into the world and it will come back. For a long time, I thought that it will come directly back, but it doesn't come back directly. But I'm just sitting and pondering those words. As I'm listening and I'm hearing that you went from that space of being told that there isn't much you can do. And then you find that passion, that place that you're like, this is my sweet spot. This is where I'd want to be. Still upset that you're not willing to admit that being a CPA or an accountant is what's gotten you to the place that you're at now, but that's something else. But now you're doing all the things that you're passionate about. Are people stepping in, similar to your neighbors, to tell you you're doing too much or you can't do that, or you, especially in the business realm? Because again, you're teaching, you have the accounting practice, you have the law practice, you're doing so many things. You have a family now. How are you balancing it all? And how are you keeping detractors away? How are you prioritizing the day as you go through it? Yes, and I'm not saying that the book of life is abstract, but it is the practical application, if you will, where the boots are actually hitting the ground. How are you managing yourself through that?
First of all, I hear that all the time. Oh, Don, you're burning at the candle at both ends. This is going to catch up with you. And how can you possibly do that? And you're doing too much and all of that sort of thing. And I've learned how can people be so wrong about my life? I don't want to get in an argument. And some people get aggressive to it. And I was told a long time ago, don't get down in the mud and wrestle with a pig, because both of you are going to get dirty and the pig is the only one that's going to enjoy it. So there's that. But in the process, from the book of life, it's nice. But the next step after figuring out where it is we want to go and end up on the last day of our lives, then the next exercise is to work your way backwards. Now, what do I got to do this year, this month, this week, this day, and come up with a list, an inventory of the things that you need to do? Because the bragging rights to that book of life don't come to us last 3 days of life. And it's what we do every single day of our lives. So I have an inventory of things that business related and personal things that I want to do and health things that I want to do. And each night in daily planning, I make up my to-do list in my calendar for the next day that incorporates the more important things. And I'll have things in there for health and things for marketing, for podcasts and all the different things. And the formula that I share with people is to overplan your day, but not overplan the day, because we're only human. And I like to overplan my day by about 10 or 15%. Give myself 10 or 15% more than I can accomplish. And that creates a healthy sense of pressure. And it's part of the Parkinson's law, which says in part that a project tends to expand with the time allocated for it. And so if you only give yourself one thing to do during the day, or if you don't have anything scheduled for the day, then you might have to spend all day figuring out what that one thing should be. You might waste the whole day. So doing the plan of action, that creates a healthy sense of pressure. And I'll have a few things left over, but I'll accomplish the most important things. One of the other lessons that I share with people, your productivity is never measured in what you don't do. You and I are going to do a fraction of what we can do in the planet in the span of time that we've got. It's almost like go to a sandy beach, and take one grain of sand and let that represent everything in your life and all your accomplishments and everything. And there's trillions and trillions of grains of sand all around that. And I could have done this. I could have written a book over there. I could have traveled over here. Yesterday I could have done. I could have another cup. And you'll exhaust yourself about all the things, getting all upset about all the things that you didn't get done. I'm now, having said that, if you made deadlines and you made commitments, of course you're going to keep that. But you think about this at the end of life, and we go to the funeral and the memorial service for our dear departed Ralph, and somebody gets up to do a eulogy, and it goes a little bit like this. Well, Ralphie, he ain't with us no more, but he never did learn how to speak Spanish. Always said he would do that, but he never did that. And he talked about going on a cruise. Never went on a cruise, no, sir. And he didn't do this, or he didn't do that. Yeah, and everybody starts to say, yeah, he didn't do that. At that time, we talk about all the things he did do. Who's a better person we'd all go to if we had a Ralphie? Who's a better second baseman on our softball? Who's a better dad to his kids? And we talk about and we celebrate one another's success. So productivity is not so much about quantity. It's about quality and about what it is by your definition of what you want to hold in person. And you're not going to get it all done at the same time.
The one thing you just touched on, sometimes it doesn't work, and not taking the day off, right? But you're going through and you're doing things, you're doing a lot. How do you recover from mistakes? Because the more you do, the more active you are, the more chances of making mistakes. The more mistakes you make, yes, the more you grow, provided that you're learning from those mistakes. But how do you manage every now and again missing the mark? And how do you bounce back?
In my earlier days and everything, I was taught that failure is a terrible thing. When things don't work, when you screwed up and it didn't work. And you shouldn't feel bad about it. And why would you do that and suffer that? Until somewhere along the line, the transition turns out that every screw-up, every mistake is a learning opportunity. It's a good thing. And I wouldn't be where I am except for not all the good things that I did and the education I had, all the things that I didn't do and the screw-ups that I had. I am a byproduct like everybody else of all the choices that I've made or have allowed others to make. And I've made some bad choices, and I wouldn't be here with you today on this moment had I not done every one of those. Yeah, it's a blessing. It's a learning thing. Yeah, that's how we learn. We don't learn from success. Success just reinforces, yeah, okay, you did it good. Yeah, cooking, yeah, hamburger the same way. You got to screw it up first. And I say, I got to try something new.
Yeah, but I agree. And I totally hear you on that one. Again, lessons or failures are lessons provided that you learn from them and you keep moving forward. There's one of my friends who, and I'll stop at this point in the show, hopefully he listens and he hears it, to your point of not wrestling with the pigs because they'll enjoy it. I've been recently started sharing with him that I am not going to argue with a fool, him, because he's going to pull me down to his level and then beat me with experience. I've been saying this for the last 6 or 7 months. So I want to give him that shout out. You just touched on the fact that you picked up emotional intelligence as coach. I like that you like that one, too, right? You just picked up.
No, I think it was Winston Churchill said this. Perhaps not, but the phrase is, "It's better to keep your mouth shut and be thought of a fool instead of opening your mouth and erasing all doubt."
I should actually put that one up. I think it's important to have those constant reminders. I am going to put that one up. I'll send you the picture once I have it. But you just mentioned emotional intelligence as one of the recent things that you've added to your toolkit. How do you see that as important, or how are you seeing that as a need for the customers that you currently, or the clients that you currently support?
All of that we've talked about, going to the muffin man or woman, the way we deal with other people and respect, and what goes around comes around, and sending out more love, and all of that is really brought to life and systematized with emotional intelligence processes. It's not just a feel-good thing. It's a way of productivity. It really is. And the competencies that I've been trained in, self-awareness and awareness of other people, authenticity and self-management, positive influence, those kinds of things. My goodness, how can anybody argue against that? It's not just a feel-good thing. And it does. It feels good, of course, but it's not some airy-fairy thing. It's a fundamental skill that is so important to our productivity.
One thing, as we probably try to wrap it up, with all of the things that are happening now, the fourth industrial revolution, the pace of change being so much, what's on the horizon? What's your outlook on personal productivity?
I see a very difficult time that we're going to be going through. And it's evidenced by what's been going on in all different areas, not only in politics and social discourse and everything. We're changing things, and the world is changing. And AI is going to magnify that. And we're not, as a species, very good at handling change. And because for good reason, we have our habits and our practices and all that. I think we're going to have a difficult transition and a lot of unknown, and the technical changes that are being made, and who knows where it's going to lead to. I think, though, with those tools, it frees us from some of the reasons why people don't really live the life that they want, because they have to work. Information has not been as widespread in the past and so forth. So we're opening up more opportunities to go into business for yourself. If you get a hookup, you could be in a Sahara desert, and you could be the next multimillionaire. The thing, and this idea of this productivity, and going back to the Think and Grow Rich 100 years ago, that was a rarity out there, and people didn't talk about that because we were focused in on survival. Up until 100 years ago, we were primarily an agrarian culture, and you just had to work hard. That's all. And all this other stuff, maybe go to church and go to the grain meeting or something like that, but we were focusing on survival. So the more that we're developing, the wealth that we're creating worldwide, and the opportunities we're creating, and the information is freeing us up and making more of those tools available long term. I think it's going to be a really good time.
So you're saying that there is opportunity, however, there are some uncertainties on the horizon as well. So as we wrap it up, Don, I guess about two things. One, if there was a way of summarizing the conversation today, maybe the through line of your life, something that would be inspiring for individuals to hear, how would you sum that up?
You do become what you think about all the time. It's your responsibility. It's your life, and you live it on your terms. You have the obligation. You've been given the gift of life. Don't squander it.
I think that's powerful. And if someone wants to find you, Don, how do they find you? And I'll include some of this in the show notes as well, but how do they find you?
The direct way is just to shoot me an email, CTSEM, that's for Connecticut Seminar, at msn.com, or they can visit my website, www.productivity-institute.com.
Also on LinkedIn, right, as well. Yeah. I would say thank you so much. I think a conversation that arcs about a little over 15 years. Thank you for making the time. And I really enjoyed the conversation with you today. And going forward, I will give you full credit for not letting the bastards get me down.
I'm grateful for
so
the
much.
opportunity, Nigel. I really appreciate this.
I appreciate you listening to this episode. If you find value in what you've heard today, please like and share, and don't hesitate reaching out to me if there's any way that I can be of service. Nigel@meinkhelp.com or Nigel Franklin Way on Instagram. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your mental energy. Thank you for listening. And until we meet again in this space, take good care of you.